What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Geek Pantheon. I am Eric, and today we had D&D Direct 2023, the annual showcase of all things Dungeons & Dragons that are coming down the pipeline. And I wanted to give my reaction and kind of summation of the things that I care about, so in case you didn't get a chance to watch it, you can know about everything here. There were a bunch of non-D&D game, but D&D brand announcements, things like toy line announcements and Minecraft DLC and Neverwinter stuff. I'm not going to be doing a deep dive on that because I don't cover that stuff on my channel. I'm going to cover the stuff that relates to D&D, the tabletop role-playing game, which covers probably about the last third of the video. We have some talk from Joe Manganiello about his documentary on the 50th anniversary of D&D. Also not going to dive too deep on that. What I am going to focus on, though, are two very big things. We got a lot more information and visuals about the virtual tabletop and the upcoming line of books that are coming out for D&D 5th edition / 1D&D. So let's kick things off with the virtual tabletop. We actually got to see some of the influencers sit down and use the virtual tabletop being DM'd by a member of the Wizards of the Coast staff, and it looks really good. It's very visually stunning. The minis look very good. The maps, the terrain, everything looks very good. Obviously, this was a very curated and intentional version of the virtual tabletop that we are seeing here. All the dice rolls seem to be physics-based on the table in that the dice are rolling around in the environment. You also have spell effects. One of the big things that I saw that I really liked is there is a very seamless integration of your D&D Beyond character into the virtual tabletop just using the share link. You put that in and it looks like you just sync it with the miniature that player is using so that their character sheet, spell, everything gets put into the mini. Now, there was a question asked during the segment about community sharing. And the answer given indicates to me that there is going to be a marketplace where people can share / buy things. It sounded very much to me like an extension of the DM's Guild, to where third-party creators can create stuff for the virtual tabletop and put it on a marketplace where people can purchase it, or if they put it up there for free, perhaps people can get it for free. But it does look like there's going to be some level of third-party support, but it seems like it's going to be through D&D, their own marketplace, similar to DM's Guild. So somebody like Matt Colville or Cobalt Press, who don't operate through the DM's Guild, probably not going to be able to utilize their stuff in the virtual tabletop. The D&D Beyond integration is interesting, though, since you can do homebrew content in D&D Beyond. It'll be interesting to see how that interacts with the virtual tabletop. Because, for example, for my home game, I am a patron of Matt Colville of MCDM and get the Arcadia magazine, and I take a lot of the stuff that's in the Arcadia magazine and I put it in D Beyond. I just don't share it, but I put it in there so that my players can utilize the options that Arcadia magazine gives. Am I going to be able to utilize the Arcadia created stuff via the homebrew integration on the virtual tabletop? That's a big question that I would have. But it seems like the messaging is very much trying to get away from the walled garden concerns that a lot of people have surrounding WotC having their own proprietary virtual tabletop. It seems like they really wanted to highlight this idea of the community being able to create things and bring them into the virtual tabletop. Whether or not that is a means to actually smash down the walls of the garden and make it an open and welcoming thing for everybody to utilize, that will be seen. One other big thing that the staff member made is that the rules are designed to be there as a reference for players and DMs, but not a barrier. An example he gave was obviously all characters have a certain movement speed, but they're not integrating the rules in such a way to where you physically can't move your mini beyond their movement speed. It'll tell you, hey, this is how far you can move with one movement, but if you want to move it further because your DM rules, yeah, you can make it there, you're more than welcome to do that. I really like that. I think that's a very smart design choice, and it seems like they're actually designing it with how people play the game in mind, as opposed to just a fully rules integrated virtual tabletop. Didn't get any answers about any kind of monetization or how we will acquire new minis, things like that. Didn't get any word on any kind of miniature creation tools a la Hero Forge. So we'll just have to wait and see and get more information. They did say they've already started bringing in friends and family of Wizards of the Coast to try out the virtual tabletop, and they're going to continue to expand that circle to more and more people to let them try it out, give their feedback, give their thoughts, so that potentially by the end of this year, a lot of people who were watching D&D Direct will have access to the virtual tabletop, is what was said in the video. Now let's go on to what Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford had to tell us about, which is the lineup of books coming down the pipeline for D&D. Now, there weren't any earth-shattering announcements. All the books that they discussed were announced in previous D&D Direct, talking about, obviously we have Keys from the Golden Vault, the Heist book that just came out. That was the first one that they highlighted. But then they got into the books coming up, like Bigby's book on giants, the Planescape book, so on and so forth. And while all of it was interesting, they showed some artwork from the books and gave a pretty, I don't want to say generic, but a very high level blurb about each book and what we can expect in each of them. What they were speaking to on a more metatextual standpoint is that all of these books are part of a singular storyline, as it were, focused on the multiverse of Dungeons and Dragons, which is something I'm very interested by. If all of the books that they're coming out with over the next, they said 5 years, are part of one continuous effort to tell a specific story, I think that can be really interesting and create this sense of continuity from book to book within Dungeons and Dragons, outside of them all being in the Forgotten Realms. However, my fear with this is potentially it's the distinction between early Marvel Cinematic Universe and later Marvel Cinematic Universe. Early MCU movies, you could only watch the Thor movies and the Avengers and be able to follow Thor's story. And these other characters would come and go and be like, oh, okay, that person's name is Iron Man, and it has zero bearing on your enjoyment of the Thor movies. Same with Captain America, Iron Man, etc. You could follow a single character through because you like the type of stories that are told about them, and the Avengers movies wouldn't have too much that you'd be lost on. Later MCU movies broke that because a lot of characters started showing up in solo movies and lots of streams getting crossed to where you had to a certain level, consume everything in order to truly understand what was going on at any given moment. By the time we hit Endgame, if you're not following all of the MCU, you're just like, what is going on? Indie books up to this point have been early days MCU. You can buy what you want, buy the type of stories that you want to tell, the type of books that you need, and you're good. I'm concerned that potentially trying to tell a cohesive narrative through source books will create this sense of, if you just go out and pick up the Deck of Many Things book that they talked about, there's going to be references to things that happen in the Planescape book, and you're like, what does this have to do? Do I need to go buy another book in order to understand what's going on here? And so that's a potential concern that I have when I hear them talk about telling a unified story of the multiverse through multiple source books. But I will say we do have a lot of books coming out, and they seem really varied, from the Bigsby's book on giants. I'm super big fan of those specific source books, like Fizban's Dragon book that we got. I really like that. So I'm excited about that book. We're going back to Phandelver with another book set there. The Deck of Many Things book is super intriguing and interesting to me. So I'm excited about the lineup that they have. I'm just curious as to how they're planning on executing this idea of an overarching narrative in the books. One thing they did not discuss, and I can't blame them, this is a marketing video. This is a PR video. No OGL discussion. No discussion about what happened, no addressing of it, nothing like that. So if you were hoping for some kind of mea culpa of here's what happened, here's why we did what we did, the Kyle Brinks apology tour that's been going on YouTube, clearly the intention is for that to serve its purpose and Direct to be wholly removed from that. Which, you can be mad about that if you want. You can think that they should have said something, they should have addressed something, because at the end of the day, the D&D Direct conference is something that the most diehard fans are going to be the ones watching, and those diehard fans were also the ones who were most invested in the OGL situation. But I can't fault them for addressing one of the most controversial and toxic choices made by the company in recent years in their marketing video. Can't fault them for that. So what's my overall reaction to D&D Direct? Obviously, they are heavily investing in the diversification of the D&D brand. Like I said, I would say the majority of this conference, it's about a half hour, the majority of it was dedicated to media that is not a tabletop role-playing game, which is fine. They want to make movies, they want to make video games, they want to make toys. I understand wanting to make money off of a lucrative brand. But like I said, this conference is for the most die-hard people that want to consume content about Dungeons and Dragons. So I question how well they synced up with their actual audience versus the perceived audience that they're trying to market to. E3 video game conferences, especially back in the day when they were big spectacle moments, you didn't really see a whole lot about licensing agreements or the third-party branded games that were going to be coming onto the platform that in actuality are where those companies make a lot of money. But the conferences that at least were celebrated, some of those conferences did focus on that stuff, and people hated it. The conferences that were really celebrated focused it on the games, the first party titles, or even the very big name third party titles that were coming to various platforms that people could engage with and play, because they knew at the end of the day the people watching these conferences are people that play the games. I think that's where a bit of a misstep came in. I think the virtual tabletop coverage and the discussion of the books were good items to include, but perhaps we could have spent less time talking about the D&D movie coming out and more time actually talking about the content of the books that are going to be coming out over the next 5 years, or what they mean when they say these books are going to be delving into the multiverse of Dungeons and Dragons. They were frustratingly vague on the actual game that we're trying to play and focus a lot more time and effort on the merchandise surrounding the game. Did you watch D Direct 2023? Let me know down below. Let me know your thoughts. Am I off base? Do you disagree with what I have to say? Or are you frustrated by the lack of discussion about the OGL or focusing on the actual game that will be coming out over the next 5 years that they spoke about? Let me know down below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time.